And let's head out to the Bud Light guest line. All guests appear on the Bud Light guest line. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Brad Graham, he's the founder of sfniners.com. He covers all things San Francisco 49ers. You can follow him on social media at Graham_SFN. What's going on, Brad? How you doing?
Steiny and Guru, I'm doing great. I mean, the offseason, being in San Francisco 49ers territory, it's never quiet. So keeping me busy, that's for sure.
Let me ask you this. Let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. I know Kyle Shanahan seemingly shut the door, but you got Joe Montana out there. You got Brian Baldinger saying, hey, maybe Jimmy G was their best option. Has that door shut completely?
As we know, Kyle Shanahan, you referenced it. He talked about in the press conference that he doesn't see a scenario where Jimmy Garoppolo will return next season. And I kind of have to believe him because when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo's situation, he's not under contract, so he's free to sign elsewhere. I imagine he'll require a big-time payday from someone, maybe like Tennessee, where Rand Carthon was just hired as a general manager. So I think all things considered, it makes sense to me why some people are talking about Jimmy Garoppolo returning. However, I don't think the 49ers will be willing to give him the contract that he will likely get elsewhere from other teams to be their starting quarterback.
What if they get bad news on Purdy?
Well, we are waiting to see what's going on with Purdy, but as we know, they have Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be cleared 100% by OTAs. So they at least have Trey Lance in the holster. And, of course, we are waiting to see that it's not going to be Tommy John, which is the hope, and it's just a repair, and that's about a 6-month timetable for return. But I would imagine that San Francisco 49ers would bring in a veteran quarterback, even if those two things were to be the case, with Brock Purdy having the repair and Trey Lance being healthy.
Brad, I got like a million I want to fire off, a million questions, but I'm going to start here. Today, the Niners made news. They got a new defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks. And, a lot of people that don't follow the game and just, hey, what time do the Niners play? They don't know what goes into, making a good defense. And I was a bit nervous when Saleh left. Then DeMeco Ryans comes in. The Niner defense is still stellar. Are you on the side to where, hey, you got Bosa and Warner and Armstead, anybody can do it? Or how should Niner fan feel about, Steve Wilks taking over and the standard that Saleh and Ryans have set?
Yeah, 100%. First of all, losing DeMeco Ryans to the Texans is effectively a big loss for the 49ers because he's such a phenomenal coach. However, to kind of your point, too, I don't think anyone can just come in. Even though the talent is there, you still have to be able to be a leader of men, and these are big, strong personalities, and you have to be able to command that respect and also continue to teach at this level. And I think Steve Wilks is that kind of guy. I think this is a phenomenal hire by the San Francisco 49ers. He has a defensive background, and so that's going to marry nice with Chris Kosarek, who's going to be the defensive line coach. There were some kind of rumors back and forth that maybe he goes and joins DeMeco on the Texans, but it does sound like Chris is going to stick around. So you have Chris, who's going to be able to manage that defensive line, the wide nine scheme, and then you bring in Steve Wilks, who has a ton of secondary experience. And if you saw what he did in the interim as interim head coach for the Carolina Panthers, he was fantastic. I mean, he led them to a 6-6 record after it looked, as we know, the 49ers went to Carolina, and after the 49ers beat them down, Matt Rule was fired and Steve Wilks took over. Steve Wilks has done a phenomenal job, in my opinion, with the Carolina Panthers, and I really, really think this is a good addition to the staff, and I think the 49ers defense won't skip a beat with Wilks at the helm.
Brad Graham joining us. He's the founder of sfniners.com. He covers all things 49ers. I know you had Brandon Ayuk on your show recently, and he said a lot of stuff about the Eagles. I actually don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about his relationship with Kyle Shanahan. And, the Warriors have a situation with James Wiseman where, a lot of fans want Steve Kerr to get this guy playing time, and clearly Kerr wants to see something before he gives him playing time. It feels like Ayuk and Shanahan had kind of a push-pull like that early in his career. When you look back at 2-3 years ago with Ayuk and what was going on with Shanahan, what do you think was going on with Ayuk and Shanahan?
Well, we actually talked about that during our interview, and Brandon provided some pretty good insight into it. But effectively, what Brandon was talking about, I think it was also kind of a learning process for both sides. Basically, both have very strong personalities. And I think, as Brandon Ayuk was getting his footing in the league, kind of understanding what the expectations were. As we know, the San Francisco 49ers, they're a run-first team, right? And they require their wide receivers to block. I asked Brandon, I was like, did you block? Did you have this? Because now we look at Brandon as being a phenomenal blocker in the scheme. I asked him, like, were you a blocker before this? And he's like, I really never blocked until I got into the NFL. So I think a big part of it is just learning what the NFL game requires, understanding what the coaches are asking of you. And again, you're a wide receiver. You want to go out there, get catches, make plays, and help your team win. And sometimes it can be frustrating when you're not impacting the game through making catches and moving the chains and doing things like that and scoring touchdowns. But Brandon Ayuk basically said, I figured out I can impact the game through blocking. And I think we really saw that shift from Brandon, especially last year around the Chicago game, when he really started picking up that element of his game. And I think, too, there was a, they had to figure it out from a personality standpoint. And Brandon Ayuk had nothing but positive things to say about Kyle Shanahan, their relationship, and basically how there were some things to work on, but they figured it out. And Brandon Ayuk said he's always going to have Kyle Shanahan's back.
Brad, help me out because I want to go here with Bosa. I've told my partner and the listeners he's Reggie White. He's Michael Strahan. I've given him all that love. But I do remember these 3 games in the playoffs. Seattle kind of had their, I won't say way in the first half, but they had a lead. Walker was running the ball. Dallas, they did some things. And Philly, obviously we know what happened there, but what didn't happen was a Bosa sack. And I'm not blaming Bosa, Brad, but I want you to tell me what you thought of him individually. And does he need some more help on that D-line so they can be disruptive? Because I thought they were a bit pedestrian in all 3 of the playoff games.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a big talking point amongst 49er fans. And I think one of the ways that I look at it, too, is I also have to give a little bit credit to some of the players on the other side of the ball. I mean, those guys get paid millions of dollars, too. And he happened to go up against some, Seattle has 2 really strong, promising rookie tackles. You look at what the Dallas Cowboys have. They have a really strong, promising rookie tackle and a veteran on the other side. And then you go to the Eagles, and you have Mailata and Lane Johnson, who are arguably the best tackled tandem in the NFL. So he happened to go against some really strong defensive lines, and I think that played a part into it. But I do think, Goo, kind of like what you were talking about, yeah, I think, he had some help. Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, Drake Jackson wasn't really available in the playoffs, but he had guys, but I think there is an opportunity that if you can get more speed coming off the edge, and I think back to the 2019 year when it was Dee Ford and Nick Bosa, how much success they had. Dee Ford was able to come screaming off the edge, and Nick Bosa did a lot of cleaning up, and they were able to really collapse the pocket that way and work in tandem. I do think that's part of it. I don't think Nick Bosa really took a huge step back in the playoffs. It just didn't result in the production that we came used to in the regular season.
Give me a Super Bowl prediction.
Uh-oh.
Woo! I'm gonna have to go with my boy BA. I'm putting all my money on the Chiefs. I got to now. I can't pick the. I like the Eagles. And it pains me to say that out loud, but I like the way their roster's constructed. I think they've got probably the best offensive line and defensive line in the NFL from a fully built standpoint. But after all this chirping, I'm going Chiefs. I got to go Chiefs on this.
I'm with you.
All right, get him off.
Oh, yeah, Eagle guy.
Hey, thank you so much, Brad. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me.